All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for February 24th, 2016. First item on the agenda is the consideration of minutes from the regular meeting on January 27, 2016. Those minutes are included with our agenda materials. Any corrections to those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, there's a blank at one portion of the minute when one of the speakers who spoke about the, I believe, about the operating hours, that sort of thing, of the soccer complex that we're planning to put out in the Jordan Farm. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that the speaker was Thomas Laird, who is, and I'm not sure of his title, but he's in charge of all the athletic programs for Park and Rec. If any of the rest of you remember who it was that, but there was some question about what the operating hours would be. He wasn't a presenter, but he had been at the meeting and got up and spoke about that. And I am fairly sure that that was Thomas Laird.
Described in our minutes as man in purple shirt. Okay.
And I get we can verify that after this meeting, and if it ends up that there's another person, we'll find out who it was and report back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, fair enough. Well, unless anybody remember, I was not present, and I don't know if anybody else.
I remember him speaking, but I'll be quite honest with you, do not remember his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't announce himself, and is the problem, and none of us caught to ask him to at the time.
So for now, he'll be man in purple shirt.
I believe that the man in the purple shirt was Thomas Laird.
All right, unless otherwise designated.
AKA.
Okay. All right, we'll consider some new business. First is a sign variance request, application S16005 by Betsy Shackelford of Premier Sign Company representing John Nickerson. She is requesting a variance from the sign ordinance prohibiting a sign being placed in or over a public utility or drainage easement, and this is for property located in a commercial highway district at 3017 Medical Center Parkway. And Ms. Kerr, if you'd review that application for us, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, members of the board. The applicant, Betsy Shackelford, with Premier Signs Company representing John Nickerson with Lazy Boy Furniture Gallery, is requesting a variance from Section 25 1/4 24A22, the City of Murfreesboro sign ordinance, which prohibits a sign placed in or over a public utility easement or drainage easement without the consent of the easement holder as well as the approval of BZA. There are two sign locations at this address which will need approval, and they are within a GDO 1 zone. The applicant is requesting permission to erect two signs within utility easements. The requests include one internally illuminated push-through style freestanding wall sign with 60 square foot of display area and an overall height of 12 foot along Medical Center Parkway. This sign is within a 40-foot sanitary sewer easement, a 30-foot, and a 30-foot public utility and drainage easement. The second sign along Avenue Way is an internally illuminated push-through freestanding wall sign with 38 square foot display area and an overall height of 10 foot 9.5 inches and will be located within a 20-foot public utility easement. The agreement for a sign in a City of Murfreesboro easement has been signed for both locations by the Murfreesboro Water and Sewer Department, the Electric Department, the City Engineer, and the Director of Building Codes. A letter of approval has also been received from CUD, Atmos Energy, and AT&T. Due to the sensitivity of the placement of the signs in regard to utility lines at these locations, the signs have been located by a registered Tennessee engineer. And also the sign along Medical Center Parkway will be situated on top of a main sewer line, and the Water and Sewer Department is requiring that after installation of the sign, a video of the full sewer section be provided to them to assure no damage to the line prior to final approval inspection. And the applicant will comply with all other setbacks and regulations. And the applicant is here to answer any questions as well as myself.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kerr. Any questions for Ms. Kerr? These signs meet all the requirements, but for the fact that they're in or over a public utility or drainage easement.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Shackelford, anything you'd like to add to your application?
I'm here for Ms. Shackelford. I don't believe so. I believe she's offered everything we have.
Okay. All right, then at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the sign variance request. Within the thing, I think in one part I read where that after it was put in, they needed to make some adjustments if needed to be.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to subject to staff comments, I think, then. So any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. Thank you, Ms. Kerr. We'll now consider some variance requests. First, application Z16006 by Mr. David Robinson. He's requesting a 5-foot variance from the zoning ordinance requiring a minimum 10-foot side yard setback. And this is for property in a medical residential district at 704 East Burton Street. All right, and Mr. Anthony.
I like Mr. Donald better.
Mr. Anthony, you review that one for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You tell I'm a little rusty.
The subject property is located at 704 East Burton Street, approximately 500 feet east of North University. The property is zoned CMR, which is the medical district residential, and has minimum required setbacks of 30 feet on the front, 20 feet on the rear, and 10 feet on the sides. The property was recently replatted, and as part of the new plat, the subject's property width, which was 70 feet prior to the replatting, was reduced to 55 feet. The width of the neighboring lot to the east was increased by those 15 feet to accommodate an existing house that had previously straddled the property lines of the two lots. Currently, the subject property does have the width of 55 feet and a depth of 145 feet. Accounting for the minimum required 10-foot side yard setbacks, the buildable width of the lot would be 35 feet. The applicant, David Robinson, wishes to construct a single-family house on the lot and is asking for a 5-foot side yard setback variance along the east side of the lot. Staff reviewed aerial photography and made a site visit. Lot widths of 50 and 55 feet seem fairly common for the area. However, many of the houses in the area do sit closer than 10 feet to their side property lines. These were likely constructed prior to current zoning standards. The applicant contends that the narrowness of his property would make it difficult to place a house on the property while adhering to the required 10-foot side yard setback. Staff can answer any questions that you may have, and I'll be happy to go through photos as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Would you review those photos
Sure.
for us, please?
This is an exhibit submitted by the applicant that does show where they are requesting this 5-foot side yard setback variance. That would be on the east side of the property. I mentioned that the property had been replatted, and here is the replat. It's included in your packet where you might get a clearer picture of it. But you can see on the plat where the 15-foot shift in the property line occurred between lots 18 and 19. Give me just a second, I apologize.
Is that a structure on lot 18 currently?
Let me see, the structure is on lot... The existing structure is on 19, and then the garage that was serving that structure was located on 18.
Okay.
Okay. Aerial photography, and this is a zoom in. And if you can see, there is a garage structure there, and I'll show you a photo of that in just a minute. It is still present on the lot, but it's going to be removed. It will not stay. This is a picture of the lot taken from East Burton Street. You can see that garage structure in the back. That's the one that's going to be removed. This is a photo looking to the west. This would be the Rutherford County EMS property. So that's a parking lot for Rutherford County EMS. A little bit further to the west is their actual building. Looking at the lot and looking to the east, that's the existing house on lot 19. So that's the one that the adjustment was made on the plat for. And then this is just a view of the vacant properties that are directly across the street from the subject property.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony?
So I'm just a little confused. The house, you're saying that the lot 19 was increased by 15 feet?
That's correct.
And what was the purpose in that? Because it looks like if you're going to remove the garage, it ain't going to make any difference.
If you look at that exhibit and you look at the dashed line that marks the previous property line, you can see that the house structure was actually over. Was actually over that line.
So the person who owned the house on lot 19 owned both properties and built on both?
I would assume that is correct.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's the west side that we're wanting the 5-foot variance, not the east side. So we'll be actually.
Tell us who you are.
I'm sorry, I'm David Robinson, the property owner.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And just to clarify, I don't know if we had it drawn up there properly or not, but it's the west side that we want to move the 5-foot variance, not the east side. So not to be closer to the other home, to be further away from the other home, and closer to the vacant lot
needs to
that's
be
next
that
to
way.
it, that's owned by NHC. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that the exhibit, though, is incorrect.
Yeah, I think it's just upside down. Because the front should be at the top and the front's actually at the bottom. But yeah, I don't know if they have north up improper. It should be swapped around the other way. So sorry about that. But that one's, yeah, basically south is up in that picture. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I'm still trying to catch up. Did you buy the property then from the people that encroached?
We bought it at auction. Yes.
Did they auction it?
It was an estate auction through Bob Parks, and I'm not sure exactly the status of it at the time of the auction.
Is the house next door occupied now?
It is not. It's for sale.
Do you know how long the two lots have existed? 18 and 19?
I do not. No.
Okay.
30, 40 years, I hear from the crowd.
And do you have a plan, a home that you intend to build on this lot?
We don't have a specific plan at the moment. We were wanting to wait to hear. We didn't want to get dashed.
Have you
the dream
found
of it.
any plans that would exist within the current setback requirements?
I mean, we're not planning on selling the lot if we don't get the variance, but to answer your question, I guess, I mean, certainly possible, but.
So you're intending to sell? I guess I don't
No, I
understand.
was just saying that we haven't settled on a plan exactly. We wanted to find out from you if we would be able to have a wider width than 35, but so yeah, it would give us a lot more options if we had, a few more feet.
And again, you're looking to expand, are you looking to encroach into the setback on the west side of the property?
On the west side, so closer to the vacant lot that's kind of a buffer zone owned by NHC.
Yeah, okay.
So it's in between the EMS parking lot and, it's the NHC. I think it's zoned the same zoning, if that's right, Donald, but it's vacant, and we actually talked to NHC about it, and, I mean, they weren't willing to sell it, but that's all we really can say, but.
So 5 feet of it is what you need. So,
Yeah, that would be great, right?
okay.
So the lot that you're saying NHC owns is next to, when I'm looking at this picture that has the 2 cars in a parking lot?
I'm not sure. I want to say that their lot goes into that parking lot, but I'm not sure exactly where the line is.
Yeah, I have the aerial photography pulled up.
That's owned by NHC, where the cursor is over.
This,
and then
this part, okay.
And then I think the next one maybe is the county with the EMS building. I'm not sure.
Okay.
This is the EMS building on the corner. Yeah.
Oh, so the parking lot is about 2.5 lots wide from what it appears.
Can you zoom in one more time?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And like he said, the garage right now that's existing is actually encroaching into that envelope, but we're going to tear that down, so we'll actually be in some way more compliant, I guess. I don't know.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Robinson?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. This time, we're going to conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. State your name and your address, please.
I'm PJ McElroy. I'm actually the general contractor for the Robinsons. And Ms. Kane, to answer your question, when we started looking for house plans for a 35-foot wide house and the square footage they're looking for and the overall structure, one of the things that came up was the house started looking more like a row house from maybe a Stratford Hall type product or a Winslow Park, and we felt like a 40-foot would really be more suitable to the charm they were trying to keep to the downtown area with a bungalow or more craftsman style house without going so far back into the property. So that was part of the request, was really to make sure that we could keep with the character of the neighborhood, and especially the downtown area as a whole and the revitalization that's going on down there. So that was really the main request for it. So obviously I'm in favor of it and appreciate your vote. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right. At this time, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for further discussions or motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve, and I'll say this. I think the reason, since NHC owns this lot, my belief would be that they're not going to be putting a house next to it, and if anything, they would be increasing the square footage of the parking lot. So I don't really have an issue with the fact that we are encroaching into this setback. So I make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Robinson, that application has been approved. All right, we'll next consider application Z16007 by Doug Short of iDesign Architecture Group, representing iCare Plus. He's requesting a 12-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 42-foot front yard setback in a commercial highway district, and this is for property located at 419 Memorial Boulevard. All right, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is the former Ruby Tuesday restaurant property located at the southwestern corner of Memorial Boulevard and Broadmoor Boulevard. The property consists of 1.5 acres, and it is zone CH. The minimum required setbacks are 42 feet on the front, 20 feet on the rear, and 10 feet on the sides. iCare Plus wishes to adaptively reuse the existing structure as a medical office. As part of the building remodel, the applicant wishes to construct an enclosed entryway or vestibule on the front of the building. The entryway would project about 12 feet beyond the existing front facade of the building. Due to the road construction and the new alignment at Memorial and Broad, The right-of-way along the front of this property has expanded westward. The subject property's front yard has been reduced considerably, causing a loss of the front parking lot as well as several parking spaces on both the north and south side parking lots. The new front property line for the subject property is situated approximately 42 feet from the existing building at its closest point. The proposed entryway would encroach into that 42-foot front yard setback by 12 feet, necessitating the applicant's request for the 12-foot front yard setback variance. The applicant contends that the shift in the front property line is not self-created and that it constitutes a practical difficulty. Prior to the property line shift, the proposed entryway could have been constructed in the proposed dimensions without the need for a variance. However, due to the road construction, they do have to seek a variance from you today. Staff can answer any questions that you may have, and we do have photographs as well if you'd like to look at those.
Yes, sir. You just kind of go through those.
Sure thing. This is a sketch that is showing the proposed entryway. The red line is showing that 42-foot front yard setback. As you can see, it sort of clips the side of the building there. That's how close now the building gets to the front setback. This entryway does project beyond that red dashed line.
Did you say those parking places there?
There were.
What's going to be in place?
We will have to ask the applicant how that's going to be handled, because most of that parking area is now, a lot of it is being consumed by right-of-way, and so I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen there. The next exhibit provided by the applicant is similar. It just shows that line cutting across, and as you can see, it's going to take out a little bit from what they had. Get back to these. Aerial photograph. And this is probably the best one to show how that line has shifted. As you can see with this new property line, this is all of the parking that would now be situated within the right-of-way. The vestibule would be here at the front of the building. There's already somewhat of a projection there from the restaurants on their own foyer that they had.
I think they're taking down the building. They're going to remodel it.
They're going to remodel it. They're not going to take. They're going to use this existing building and just add. They want to add this onto the front. And then this is just a shot of the parking lot, and as you can see, there's a lot of construction taking place there right now. I did talk with our traffic engineer, and he tells me I wasn't sure about the fate of Broadmoor because it is completely closed off right now, but he said that it will reopen eventually as this construction moves along.
I mean, that's how you're going to access this property. Is you cannot access it off of Memorial.
Right. It's already very difficult, and I believe it becomes impossible with the new alignment.
Okay.
So that was going to serve as the front of the building. You're just going to, cars will access from the west.
I think that the safest access is definitely going to be off of Broadmoor.
Now, it's showing, for example, on these site layout, grading, utility plan, this, it's showing there's still access to Memorial, but I don't think that that's going to be possible, just because they're going to be on right there on the exit ramp to Broad, right?
Right.
Okay.
Actually, Chairman, I believe there's going to be a retaining wall along that property line.
Yeah.
I don't know how high it will be at those points, but there will be a retaining wall there for the ramp that's coming off Memorial to come down to miss the bridge and come down to Broad. So, yeah, there will be no access from Memorial.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any other questions for Mr. Anthony? All right, Mr. Short, anything you'd like to add to your application, sir?
To, in a way, answer your question, we just wanted to...
Give us your name, please.
Oh, it's
so we'll
Doug
have it on the
Short.
record. Thank you. I'm sorry?
Doug Short.
Thank you.
And just to kind of answer we are losing the whole front parking, and we just wanted to have those two doors going sideways so that we do have parking on each side. That's why we wanted to do that. And the way the building was laid out, that is going to remain the front entrance of the building, which probably doesn't make sense looking at that site plan, but that's what's going to happen.
Thank you, sir. All right, at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? All right, seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to any staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved, Mr. Short. And we'll next consider application Z16008 by Ronald and Lauren Nelson, requesting a 2.5% variance from the zoning ordinance requiring lot coverage to be a maximum of 25% in a single-family RS10 district. And this is for property located at 117 North University Street and 534 East College Street. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to point out that we ran out of copies of the plan, so I have one copy there for the both of you. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. We can share.
Thanks. The subject property consists of two structures on one lot, located at 117 North University Street and 534 East College Street. The applicants, Ronald and Lauren Nelson, own both structures. The structure facing North University Street is used as a single-family house, while the structure facing East College Street is used as a pool house. The North University portion of the lot is zoned RS10, while the East College portion of the lot is zoned RS8. Applying the stricter zoning standards to the lot, the maximum lot coverage allowed is 25%. The applicants wish to make several improvements to the property, particularly around the pool house. These improvements include the addition of front and back porches to the pool house and a new two-car garage, which would be attached to the pool house. The subject property consists of 18,306 square feet. The existing lot coverage is 3,565 square feet, or 19.5% of the lot's total area. The new additions, the porches and the garage, would add 1,441 square feet of lot coverage, giving a new lot coverage of 5,006 square feet, or 27.35% of the total lot area. Rounded up to account for any incidental overage, the proposed lot coverage will exceed the maximum lot coverage allowed by 2.5%, and the applicants request a variance to allow this overage. The applicants contend that the size of the lot, as well as its L shape, pose practical difficulties and make the lot unusual when compared to other lots in the area and in similar zoning districts. The applicant submitted exhibits showing both the proposed site layout as well as draft elevations showing how the existing structures would be affected by the additions. Staff can answer any questions that you have, and I'll be happy to run through photographs as well.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Get those photographs up, please. This is sort of a more elaborate rendition of the final plat that combined these two lots recently. This one shows the new additions on it, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to see. But basically, everything that's marked with a hatch mark, this is the new lot coverage that's being added. So this would be the garage, and then you can see the covered porches here as well. I'm going to, just for a moment, skip down to show you the aerial photography. So this is College Street, and then this is University Street. The
Existing house faces North University Street. It has a rear driveway. What's being called the pool house faces College Street, and it has a driveway. My understanding is that there will be one driveway to access a garage that's going to be built onto the side of the pool house between the pool house and the principal structure. My understanding is, again, that there'll be one driveway there. And then the other additions, again, onto the pool house are a front and rear porch as well. That's what's going to contribute to make the 5,006 square feet of lot coverage on this lot. This is the existing house on North University Street. And then this is the existing pool house on East College Street. And as you can see, there are two driveways there running between the two. Again, this is the pool house is here on the right. The primary house is here on the left. The area that would be affected by the garage would be this area just beyond the white fence on the left-hand side of the pool house in this photo. This is a photo showing, you can see both driveways here actually, and this is the area where the garage would be. There are also within your packet, there are some draft building elevations, building sketches that you can see, so that if you want to see how these new additions onto the pool house will appear, those are included as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? All right. Dr. Ms. Nelson, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Yes. My name is Ronald Nelson, and this is my wife, Laura Nelson. We're the applicants for this lot coverage variance. And our objective, as was stated by Mr. Anthony, is our intention is to enhance the value of our property by building a two-car garage on the 534 East College Street structure. And
also to add the front porch, which is in keeping with all the other houses along that street, pretty much have a front porch. As you saw from the photographs, it's just really a block-shaped house, and we feel that a front porch would really make it fit in better with the rest of the existing historic homes, because it's a more newly constructed home, and our own home was built in 1911.
The best I can tell, it's not a front entry garage, correct?
No.
Yeah, so you
It's
still
from
have
the
a
side.
driveway.
It'll just look from the street like the rest of the house.
Yeah.
we wanted to keep that appearance consistent.
Right.
We don't want garage doors where you see them.
You guys have to deal with the Historic Zoning Commission?
If you
y'all
kindly
approve
approve this,
first,
then
okay.
we're in for another round, yes.
Curious.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
All right. At this time, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, please come forward. All right. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve. I think it will be, make the property look better, and I would dare say that property downtown, we've got several other parcels that would be covered more than what they're even asking for. So I make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Your application has been approved. On to historic zoning now, I guess. Next is application Z16009 by Beth Throneberry. She's requesting a 10-foot variance from the zoning ordinance which requires a minimum 42-foot front yard setback in a heavy industrial district, and this is for property located at 201 Shelby Street. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you review that for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Subject property is located along the north side of Shelby Street, which is a cul-de-sac near South Church Street and Interstate 65. The property is zoned HI and has minimum setbacks of 42 feet on the front, 20 on the rear, and 10 on the sides. The applicant, Beth Thornberry, wishes to construct a new 24,000 square foot building on the property. As part of the site plan review process, city staff identified the need for a bulb at the end of the cul-de-sac. Presently, the street just empties into a parking lot, a private parking lot at the end. A bulb would allow traffic to turn around at the end of the cul-de-sac rather than within the private parking lot. Because the bulb is much wider than the straight segments of the street, the right-of-way along Shelby Street will expand outward along the bulb. For the subject property, this means that the right-of-way will expand by as much as 30 feet along the bulb. The proposed structure will sit approximately 60 feet from the straight portion of the property line. However, at its closest point to the expansion, the structure will be situated 32 feet from the property line, encroaching into the minimum required 42-foot front yard setback by 10 feet. The applicant is asking for a variance for that 10-foot encroachment. The applicant contends that because the expansion of the cul-de-sac is a city requirement, the situation is not self-created. Further, the loss of lot depth constitutes a practical difficulty. The applicant also contends that being located along a cul-de-sac bulb is an unusual characteristic for properties in the HI district. Staff can answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant has also submitted a full site plan packet as well that we can look at.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Let's look at some of these plans, maybe get a little bit better idea of where we are and where we're encroaching.
Trying to figure out the best one to start with. Let's see. I think the sheet marked Variance Exhibit 4 of 4 at the bottom of the sheet is one that definitely gives you a good picture of exactly how the cul-de-sac bulb works and how it's going to jut into the subject property. I have that one pulled up on the screen. And as you can see, the Shelby Street did just continue on a straight path before emptying into a parking lot on the lower right-hand side of that sheet. However, putting in this bulb at the end now will allow traffic to circulate. The problem is, of course, that it is jutting into this property and cutting off a little bit of their property. And you can see there how the building sits closer to the right-of-way now than it would have if the street had continued on straightward.
So the street currently, does it actually end there at the end of the parking lot?
It ends in a parking lot across the street. It's if I remember right, it's like a gun shop or shooting range that's at the end of Shelby Street, and the street just sort of empties into the parking lot there.
Okay. So how are they going to access that parking lot then once the cul-de-sac?
Yeah, so that parking lot would continue there would be a cut at the end of the cul-de-sac to allow traffic to continue on into that parking lot.
Okay, so would the street then is it still city-owned right-of-way, or would it become part of the parking lot?
So the street would be city-owned right-of-way up until the end of the cul-de-sac bulb, and then any parking lots that come off of that would be privately maintained.
So what used to be Shelby Street is going to be rededicated, I guess, back to the property owner?
That's a tough one to answer because I have not looked at exactly how exactly where the right-of-way of Shelby Street ended and where the private ownership began. I have an aerial photograph that has property lines laid over it, so it may be of some value. Let me pull that up here real quick. So the site is the one highlighted here in green. If you follow the hand here, you can see Shelby Street there's a property line there. This is the shooting range, the gun shop here. And you can see the property line, and you can see Shelby Street just sort of veers off into that parking lot. So at some point there, the city maintenance of the street ends and private maintenance begins.
Okay. But the plan is to construct a cul-de-sac about where that red roof is?
It would be about
in there. Okay.
Right here.
Okay. And is it the interstate there behind the property?
I believe that is a railroad track behind the property. Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
The interstate would be right down here.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? You're not Miss Throneberry.
I'm guessing she's much prettier than I am, so I sure hope for her sake. But, I think Mr. Anthony described that right. I think that the right-of-way actually continues all the way over to the railroad that you saw on the aerial there, but there's no physical roadway itself constructed in there. It ends basically where this cul-de-sac is going.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion. Mr. Anthony, one question. I know the next application is for 230 Shelby Street. Where's that in relation to this property?
It's directly across the street.
Okay. Same situation,
Yes.
affected by the same bulb.
Yes, you won't have to listen to me talk as much on that one.
I
I'll just say, remember what we just talked about?
All right. All right. Ready for a motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the variance, subject to any staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. We'll next consider property across the street. It's application Z16010, also by Ms. Beth Throneberry, requesting a 10-foot variance from the zoning ordinance requiring a minimum 42-foot front yard setback. This is in light industrial district for property located at 230 Shelby Street. Mr. Anthony.
All right, so this case is very similar to the last one. This property at 230 Shelby Street lies along the south side of the street and is zoned LI, which has minimum required setbacks of 42 feet on the front, 20 on the rear, 10 on the sides. An existing structure does currently sit on this property, and it does adhere to the minimum required setbacks. However, when that new bulb is constructed, the existing structure, a portion of it, will encroach into the required 42-foot front yard setback by 10 feet. And so the request is, again, for a 10-foot variance. As with the last case, the applicant contends that the city required the cul-de-sac expansion, thus not self-created. The applicant also notes the loss of lot depth and notes that being located along cul-de-sac bulb is an unusual characteristic. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Questions for Mr. Anthony? All right, Mr. Taylor, anything you want to add? All right, at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the variance request.
No second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Taylor, those applications have both been approved. Good, sir. All right, next we'll consider application Z16011 by Clyde Roundtree of Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing Sammy and Abu Zara, requesting a 13-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum of 20-foot rear yard setback. And this is a property located in a commercial highway district at 415 Southeast Broad Street. All right, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located at the northwestern corner of Southeast Broad Street and South Manny Avenue within the CH district. Minimum required setbacks are 42 feet on the front, 10 on the side, and 20 on the rear. The applicant, Mr. Abuzara, operates a convenience store and auto sales lot on the subject property. The applicant wishes to construct a vehicle wash bay on the north side of the existing auto sales and service building. The site has already been cleared and graded to some extent. According to the materials submitted by the applicant, the proposed structure would measure 30 feet by 30 feet, and the structure would encroach into the required 20-foot setback along the north side of the property by 13 feet, leaving a 7-foot rear yard setback. The applicant seeks a variance for the 13-foot encroachment and contends that the shape of the lot and the placement of the existing buildings on the lot should be considered as unusual characteristics and practical difficulties. It's staff's understanding that the vehicle wash bay will be used mostly as a prep area for vehicles to be sold on the lot and not really as a car wash that's open to the public. Therefore, staff is not requiring the queuing spaces that would be required of a commercial car wash. Should this ever change and the car wash become open to the public for use, then the applicant would need to consult with planning staff to determine whether a new or revised site plan is necessary. If the board approves the variance, staff recommends that it do so with the following condition. The applicant shall obtain a footing survey prior to construction to ensure that the new structure is situated within the required setbacks, including any varied setbacks granted by the board. Staff can answer any questions that you have, and we also have photographs of the site as well.
Okay. Let's take a look at the photographs. I think beginning with these aerial photographs, particularly this one right here, maybe give you some idea of where this is going to be located.
Sure. You want to start with that one? We can do that. Preferably not upside down. Okay. So the site is at the corner of Manny and Southeast Broad. You may recognize there's sort of a bright orange convenience store that's located there at that corner. And then to zoom into the site, that's the convenience store. The auto sales building is here along the eastern property line. It's a sales office, and then I believe that there are either 2 or 3 service bays here with service doors. The area that we're looking at for the variance is on this part north of the existing building. And since this is the rear property line, this northern property line is the rear property line, this is where the variance is needed. You would need to be 20 feet off of that property line to meet the zoning ordinance setback standards, and the structure is 7 feet off of that.
What is that to the north?
To the north, and Mr. Roundtree is here, I don't want to put him on the spot, but I believe that actually the owner of this property utilizes that lot for car inventory as well.
Is the property line there to the, I guess that'd be the east, is it a side setback or is that a rear?
Staff has deemed that this would be considered a side setback.
Is that a 5-foot setback?
So because it abuts commercial property, it's actually, my understanding is it's a 0 setback because it's commercial, CH abutting CH.
Okay. So that building then, as it exists, is not non-conforming, it's conforming?
Correct. And let me see, the applicant did submit an exhibit, which we can put here. This exhibit does show where the proposed car wash building would be located. Again, it's there on that northeastern corner of the property.
Okay. And then do you have some photographs too?
I do. Let me
Is
get
that
to
lot to the
those.
north, is it a separate lot? Is it part of this
It's actually a separate lot.
that he owns, or somebody said if there was queuing some cars on that lot? Or
They are storing cars there. I don't know if he owns. He owns the lot.
Okay.
Okay. So just to go through the photographs, this first one was taken from South Manny. This is going to be the rear of the convenience store. This is the auto sales and service building, again, with the 3 service bays. Here on the left side of that building, this is where the car wash structure would be placed. This shows where there's already been some clearing of that site in preparation for the car wash.
What was there? It looks like there's something like a concrete pad or something there.
I think that they have poured the concrete pad before coming here.
Oh, I see. Okay. That was just empty land before. Okay.
Right. Again, from another angle where you can see back toward Broad Street would be here off to the right of this photo.
So if this was one lot of record, then that the property line to the east wouldn't matter, and this would be a conforming structure. Am I gathering that correctly?
Yes, the one to the north, where they store the cars.
Right.
If that property line was not
lot.
there, they would be.
He owns that piece of property.
Right.
So, okay.
Right. And then this is just a shot taken from Broad. I couldn't get too far out into Broad because the traffic was rather heavy that day and every day. But you can see the side of the auto sales building there. That's it on photos.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
This is just a comment not having to do with this particular application. I find it odd that even from like a fire code's perspective that there is a 0 setback in heavy industrial. It means you could just have one building right next to the...
Well, so it's in the CH, and that's for zoning purposes, but there would be fire and building and code issues that would require building separation. So zoning doesn't always line up with those codes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would expect that there is some distance, and there's going to be there'll be a site plan review process in which those other departments will weigh in and make sure that they're staying sufficiently away from the other buildings.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any other questions, Mr. Roundtree, anything you'd like to add to the application? Okay. All right. At this time, then, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. And state your name and address for us, please.
Todd Hayes, and it's 425 Southeast Broad Street, the property right next door to the car lot there. I'm the leasee there with the owner here, Mr. Mitchell Falk, working with him today. I've got some good detailed pictures. If you don't mind, I'll hand them to you. If it's something you want to look at closer.
Sure.
I've got 2. I apologize. I only have 2 copies.
You start with this movie there.
Thank you.
Those same pictures. Get an idea of what close. There's not a concrete pour yet either. I don't think they've poured anything. But I didn't know everything about the setback requirement as far as 2 commercial buildings there. But our concern was they cleaned down straight from the fence, from the property line. The fence is actually starting to fall that belongs to Mr. Falk on our property. But the fence is starting to fall over, and the earth was cut straight down by the property line, just with like a bulldozer or a backhoe, and the roots and everything you see in the pictures there just kind of chewed off. It was just a straight wall. So we're worried about that property now. There's only a few feet, maybe 2.5, 3 feet to the building that backs up to that property, about that land starting to fall off and the road away, which is going to affect the building that's already there. So we're worried about that. If there need to be a retaining wall there or something, this property, the building they want to add moved out a little bit and that built back up or something put there, but you'll see in those pictures that fence is hanging on by a thread. We had another fence that ran down a little different situation, those pictures toward the end where it shows the Broad Street view, kind of I showed there. There used to be a fence that ran from the existing corner you see where the fence ended on down to Broad, and that fence was removed. I came in one weekend about a year ago on a Monday morning, and our fence was gone. And they had removed the fence without us knowing about it, and we talked to them, and at that time if we want to do another fence, they agreed they'd help us put a fence back up. But we get a lot of foot traffic through there now, and it kind of messed our security up a little bit. We're used to pedestrians had to use the sidewalk, at Broad. Instead of walking through the properties and up right by the building and actually walking, they have access real easy to get down between those buildings. Where before, I have a nice camera system, before they had to go and stay on the sidewalk, and walk that way. But so we lost a fence there, which is a different situation than this rear one, but now we kind of live with the front one being gone without us knowing about it, even though it was our fence. But now the rear one's starting to fall over, and we're worried about the building possibly creeping right behind it. So that's our concern, is the stability of that land there where it's been removed. You can kind of see a picture on the existing building there next to where they're going to do the car wash bay, how that taper of the paint line on the old building, and you can see the land to the left in the pictures. That's where the earth used to taper out, which supported that pretty nice. And I know it's been that way for years and years, but now it's just a straight, sheer cutoff there.
So is that your red?
That red building, yes, is part of our property, yes.
Okay.
And it's been there for...
My name is Mitchell Falk, and I have owned that property since '85. And these majority of things has took place without codes. And first one thing and another, We just accidentally seen the layout there of the pad, and that's when we, confronted it.
Is the applicant here? Besides you, Clyde?
I should have made more copies of those pictures. I apologize for that. For everybody to have a set.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hayes or Mr. Falk? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
for that information.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing us.
Yes, sir. And before we get to Mr. Roundtree, anybody else wishing to speak for or against this application? Okay. All right, Mr. Roundtree, I'll give you the last word here. Have you seen the photographs?
I haven't.
You may want to take a look at them. I know. Okay. Yeah, I figured you probably.
Again, my name is Clyde Roundtree from Huddleston Steel Engineering. The catalyst for the project really was the initial construction. I believe there's a building permit secured, and once the cut was made, it brought to the attention of the neighbors, and that slowed down the process. And so as a result, our clients had to go back and go ahead and seek the variance first, and then the site planning process. It's my understanding either that the retaining wall would be integral to the foundation of the new building, or there'd be a retaining wall that would be put behind the building that would alleviate our neighbors' concerns. So I know that it's not going to go unnoticed. Obviously, that's going to have to be dealt with, but that's what kind of catalyzed the whole process as far as that slope being cut. And so there was a stop order on the job, and basically had to move through this process. So the concerns they have are valid. The fact is that we're losing a little time in the process trying to get all the other due diligence done. But as far as the erosion is concerned, that will be taken care of. And like I said, it'll either be integral to the foundation of the building, i.e. they'd put a retaining wall and they'd build a building on top of that, or they would go ahead and put a retaining wall against the slope and build a building independent of that wall. The site planning process is beginning, but I'm not the one doing the engineering on that, but I know it's been a concern that's been addressed through the site. It will be addressed through site planning.
What about the fencing piece?
As far as...
Are they going to, is this applicant going to put a fence above that retaining wall, or is it just going to remain the same?
Well, if they've mentioned that he's willing to cooperate, I don't know exactly about the fencing concerns. If it's going to fall, I'm sure it'll be secured through the process, either reinstated and made secure. As far as the corridor, have you talked to Sammy about that, trying to close that off? Because that's an interesting concern. That'd be a pretty easy thing to solve, I would think, just to go close that access so no one can go behind the building. But I haven't spoken specifically to the client about the fence in particular.
Mr. Anthony, what? what, I guess, insurance and follow-up do we have that makes sure that this is constructed? Because that cut is terrible, and that building's going to come down and inside a year probably if that's not addressed. What's going to happen, to make sure that building is constructed, that retaining wall is constructed so that it ensures the stability of the next door property?
I think during a site plan review process, once our engineering department gets heavily involved in this, they will provide guidance to the applicant on how to ensure that cut is stabilized. I know that they've looked at it already. It's actually, I believe, from the engineering department looking at it that resulted in the stop work order that occurred. So they're very well aware of the situation and the importance of it, and the fact that this gentleman's building is sitting just right above that cut. Everybody's very aware of that. So I know during the site plan process that's of the utmost importance for engineering to look at.
Okay. And so if it never gets constructed, then what happens?
They're going to have to remedy this cut somehow or another. I don't know that discussion has made it to that point because the assumption is that there's going to be a structure placed there. But I can definitely speak with our planning director and the engineering director as well to determine what to do if there's no structure placed there. But I'm sure that there's going to have to be some remedy to stabilize that hillside sooner rather than later, hopefully.
And it kind of goes back again to Mr. Halliburton's question about it being...
I still don't. I mean, I'd love, Mr. Ives, for us to look. I don't get not having a zero setback on heavy industrial. I get the codes part, but I don't understand. We got setbacks on any other zone that I can think of.
Well, let's take a look. I do believe that is correct. That there are zero setbacks between properties that are zoned heavy industrial.
Yeah.
However, again, the building codes does require some either firewalls or particular firewall ratings or separation for buildings. So regardless of a setback, and if the guy who got there first builds his building right on the property line, which some of them are, then a subsequent building is either going to have to be fire rated or moved away from it.
Right, but y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm hearing this correctly, a permit was given, and and one of the reasons why probably is because that there was no setback requirement, so there wasn't really anything to look at in reference to maybe second thinking of the issuing of the permit in and of itself.
I have not investigated anything about the issuance of the first. In fact, I'm not sure a permit was a permit, a construction. I think work started without any permit.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that for sure.
That makes a little more sense.
But I think that's what happened.
Okay. Thank you.
And the section of the ordinance, I'll give you the citation in a moment, but it's for all commercial uses in the CL district and for all uses in the CH district. The minimum side yard specified in Chart 2 shall apply only if the property abuts or is adjacent to property zoned or used for residential purposes or the residential portion of an approved planned development. Otherwise, no side yard is required.
And I'd say if the variance passes, we're planning on submitting the site plan tomorrow. I mean, he's really aggressive about trying to get this done, so there's no... We're not really hesitant about him not doing it. We just want to make sure, as you're concerned, Chairman Rogers, that the situation's alleviated. No question about that. But I do know from the engineering standpoint, it's already been, as Donald said, it's planning's looked at it, engineering's looked at it, so there's no question that it'll be addressed.
And tomorrow is submittal day for Planning Commission, so hopefully this item would come in tomorrow.
I would offer a suggestion. It might be appropriate for this body to condition the variance approval on the site that has been partially excavated being stabilized to the, and I'm not sure if that should be to the satisfaction of the city engineer, to the satisfaction of Building Codes Department, or if it should be to a consulting engineer that is retained and paid for by the applicant. The applicant has as I understand it, started work without any permits, and if there's some cost to remediating that, it should be borne by him, and certainly not by the neighbor. And I have no earthly idea how critical that looks like about a 3 to 4 foot cut, what it takes to put a retaining wall up that will stabilize that site. So whether that takes a civil engineer to look at and approve, or if that's something that our city staff, building codes and city engineers can look at and approve, I just don't know.
Maybe if we say something like the city staff, or if the city staff deems it appropriate, a third-party consultant.
A third-party consulting engineer.
Okay.
I believe that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm a little hesitant to vote for this, just for this, and this has nothing to do with you, Mr. Roundtree, but the fact that the applicant's not here and we're not having the ability to ask why a permit was not requested and a building permit was not requested to begin with. I think that we are, I don't know that owed is the right word, but I'd love to hear why. And if anything, I'd like to defer this to figure that out, because he's put himself in this position.
And Mr. Halliburton, I would say the only thing I know that I don't know the whole scenario, but I know he's met twice with Gary in planning. I mean, there's been a lot, whether it's logical or right, there's been an explanation that's been given to the city planning staff. So I know, and they've been the one encouraging to walk through this process, and we've been pretty diligent since that time. And again, he's trying to move it through as fast as possible to try to get this, mitigated before it becomes any worse. But obviously, it's something he did under some presumption. But I think that's been pretty clarified with the city staff, at least on the planning side. But I don't know the whole story myself.
I would be concerned about deferring due to the nature of this cut and the stability of the land. It may be better to provide such a condition as Mr. Ives suggested and allow for this to be corrected without any further damage potentially being done. I don't know.
That'd be my only
quickly.
concern. Any delay would be a concern, just the fact that either we're adding a step to getting it mitigated, or we're slowing down the process and it stays kind of in an unstable state. So again, I think the site plan would show a retaining wall-ish, whether it's, again, independent of the building or integral to the structure of the building. And we could denote that on the plans or whatever we need to do to put, engineer to approve. I mean, we already have to have the survey to make sure the footers are in the right place. But I think as far as that wall stabilization, that could be covered probably with, within the context of the site plan, I would hope. I mean, we'll make it mandatory if that's what we need to denote that on the drawings.
Mr. Anthony, you mentioned that the north property boundary has been you've deemed it to be a rear setback,
right?
And you've deemed this eastern boundary to be a side setback. Why have you? Is that just your discretion, or is there threshold things or benchmarks you look at to deem these?
We determined that this was actually a corner lot, and that's because it does have a little bit of frontage on South Manny. And so with a commercial corner lot, you have to assign two fronts, one side and one rear, according to the zoning ordinance. So we determined that the primary frontage was on Southeast Broad, which is where probably 90% of the frontage for this lot is. So the rear would be the opposing side from that, which would be the northern property line.
And the other front would be the short little segment on Manny.
Correct.
Manny.
Correct.
Okay. Well, why do you say it would just be the long end, then opposite the long end gets the rear? Is that in the ordinance somewhere?
That's a very good question. I don't know if that's if that is in the ordinance, or if that is just something that we would typically apply.
Common sense.
That's probably the way that we looked at it.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Roundtree? We can probably let him sit down. All right, thank you, sir. All right, then if there's no one else wishing to speak for or against this application, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open the floor for further discussion, motion, questions.
Did I hear you say that some concrete had already been poured there?
There is. If you, the photo that I have up, if we can get that pulled up.
That appears to be very old.
Yeah,
it doesn't appear that that's been poured in connection with this project. I'm not certain of that, but if you look at it,
it looks like brick.
Actually, it's rebar.
Yeah.
You can tell there's a better picture a little closer that shows it's actually rebar gravel.
Okay.
And the site plan does say that there will be asphalt flush with the building. So whether they'll dig this up or simply cover it, I don't have any idea, but that will be an asphalt according to the site plan. And as he spoke earlier, you can see in that picture very clearly the outline of where the dirt was on the side of that building that's on the right-hand side of that picture.
I guess, I hate to be put in a position to approve something just because we don't want to cause a problem to the neighbors when we're kind of, this board's being put in the middle in my view. But I agree with Ms. King. I don't want the integrity of this thing to go any further out than cause the neighbor even that much more problem by the fact that we take an inaction or delay action. So I'm going to hesitantly approve this subject to staff comments. And so, Mr. Ives, I heard you, I got a little confused on the whole civil engineer and then third-party engineer. So I'd like your help in the citing of my motion.
I think the requirement I would recommend is that the bank at the rear of this property be stabilized to the satisfaction of either the city engineering department or the city building and codes department. And if either the engineering or building codes department feels that approval of the remediation, a wall of some kind, if the approval of that is beyond their capability, that they will arrange to retain a consulting civil engineer to give us an assurance that the design and the construction is adequate to support the property to the rear, the neighbor's property.
At the cost of the applicant?
At the cost of the applicant, absolutely.
So moved.
Is there any necessity, just asking for a time limit that goes? They mentioned there's some expediency for tomorrow, but if that doesn't, I don't have a clue whether it's that time sensitive or not. But
I'm frankly unsure of what of this board's ability to put, as an enforcement board, essentially, and putting a time limit on it. Because it's going to have to go through the site plan process and then probably some, not only site plan review, but then there'll be construction plans that have to go through some reviews. And I'm sure that they're going to be trying to expedite this for all the concerns we've heard about, but I don't know what that will be.
Okay.
I'll second Mr. Halliburton's motion.
Including the recommended conditions by the staff. Sorry.
Oh.
I failed to mention that in my motion.
I thought you did. I apologize. I thought I heard that. So I second his full motion, including staff recommendations and the recommendations so eloquently given by Mr. Ives.
All right.
Well, I want to hear what Chairman Rogers thinks about that. Are you agreeing with that? Or?
I think that's appropriate. We got to get it fixed as soon as possible. This fellow's created this condition that we've got to repair immediately, and I haven't really had anything that would prolong this and create any uncertainty in his mind or excuse that he would have to act on this to fix it ASAP. So I think I'm kind of with Ken that we really don't have any choice. I don't have any objection to the encroaching into the setback. It's just the issue of getting this cut remedied here. And so I think acting now is probably more appropriate than putting it off any. Any other questions, comments? All right, we're ready for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Roundtree.
Can I ask Mr. Ives a question? So will this go on the consent agenda for the Planning Commission, or will it be an item on the agenda itself that we would look at? And the only reason why I asked that is...
I think that if you requested it go on to the regular agenda,
I would like
it
that.
will be there for
Yes,
sure,
yeah.
regardless of what it might otherwise happen.
Right.
If you ask for it on the agenda, it'll be there.
Then I would request that, please.
And another thing, too, Ms. Brenda, can we get the pictures that have been
I was
presented?
going to ask that.
Yeah,
I have a copy, and so I can just give those to you after the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate y'all being here.
And for Mr. Halliburton, if somehow it gets put on consent at the meeting, you can ask that it be pulled. So.
Right, thank you. That's just if I'm there, but yeah.
I made a note.
Okay.
I'll get it to him this
Okay.
afternoon. Okay.
All right. We'll move on to application Z16012 by Mr. Steve Steele of Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing Philip and Tammy Dodd. He's requesting a 5-foot variance from the zoning ordinance requiring that a shared planting yard between two adjacent properties have a minimum width of 10 feet. And this is the property located in a heavy industrial district at 511 Middle Tennessee Boulevard and 640 Captain Joe Fulgham Drive. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is a 2-acre lot located at 511 Middle Tennessee Boulevard and 640 Captain Joe Fulgham Drive. Property is owned HI. There are presently 2 structures situated on the lot. A commercial strip center faces Middle Tennessee Boulevard, while a transmission shop faces Captain Joe Fulgham frontage. The 2 structures have separate parking areas that are divided by a 5-foot landscape strip. The applicants, Philip and Tammy Dodd, plan to subdivide the property through the existing landscape strip. Section 27J of the zoning ordinance requires that perimeter planting yards for 2-acre sites be a minimum of 8 feet along the front and 5 feet along all other sides. Along a shared property line, a shared planting yard must have a minimum width of 10 feet. As shown on the site layout provided by the applicants, both new lots will adhere to all required planting yards except on the property line that will divide the 2 lots. The applicants wish to keep the existing 5-foot landscape strip and use it as the shared planting yard. Doing so would require a 5-foot variance from the 10-foot shared planting yard standard. As discussed in the staff report, the existing parking areas and driveways near the landscape strip appear to meet city minimum requirements. For example, the transmission shop driveway adjacent to the landscape strip is 23 feet in width, which is 1 foot above the 22-foot minimum. If the landscape strip is widened, the driveways and parking areas on both the north and south sides of the strip would likely have to be reconfigured to meet city standards. The applicants contend that the present lot configuration is not self-created. Further, they contend that because the site is fully developed, compliance with Section 27J of the zoning ordinance would cause considerable disruption for the existing businesses. If the board approves the variance request, staff recommends the following condition. The owners of the properties located at 511 Middle Tennessee Boulevard and 640 Captain Joe Fulgham Drive shall create a shared maintenance agreement document and submit it to the planning director and city attorney's office for review. Upon approval by the planning director and city attorney, the owners shall execute the agreement and record it in a manner to be determined by the city attorney. Staff can answer any questions that you have, and we can also review the site layout if you'd like.
Yeah, the only picture I'm seeing, Mr. Anthony, is this one right here, and it's overhead. Are there any actual site pictures?
No, I only have the aerial photographs for this site.
Yeah, maybe if you can put that up and show us where the current landscape strip is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you can look at the screen or look at the photos in front of you, the commercial center that faces Middle Tennessee is here in front. The transmission shop is at the back of the lot, and if you look very closely, you can see this approximate 5-foot landscape strip that divides those properties. The parking lot for the transmission shop is north of there. Parking and loading area for the commercial center south of there. These two buildings are served by separate entrances. The transmission shop is accessed via an entrance just north of the landscape strip.
And so the proposed subdivision line would go just
right down the middle.
Right down the middle of
right
the
down
landscaping
middle.
strip.
Mm-hmm. And let me see, we have the drawings submitted by the applicant do show how the lot would be subdivided. The landscape strip is not present on the sketch here, but it is where the property line is showing there. Let me see. They did separate sketches for each of the two buildings, and so this is a portion of the landscape strip. And then for the southern building, again, a portion shown here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Anthony?
It looks like there's a chain link fence. Is that being added, or is that already in existence?
There is not a chain link fence that I recall from a site visit. So if there's one shown on the plan, I believe that would be maybe being added.
This is my wife Tammy, and there is a chain link fence, fenced in area behind the building that's facing Middle Tennessee Boulevard.
This, sort of adjoining the building?
The storage area.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought I saw on the plan one that would be in the planting yard.
I'm sorry.
I thought I saw, I may be mistaken, but it appears that there's an arrow pointing to the planting yard that says 6-foot high chain link fence.
Yeah, that's...
I have a site plan if you'd like to look at it that has the fence on.
Yeah, that's all been approved. The fence has been approved by the...
I was just asking if that was going to be added or if it's already there.
It's already there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you show us on, Mr. Anthony, where it is on the...
Sure.
Maybe on that aerial shot?
On this one?
Yes, sir.
Let's see. If it's okay, I'll ask the applicant to tell us where any existing fencing is located.
Would you like to see it on the site plan?
Is there any existing fencing?
Yes, there is. That's old.
This aerial. Okay.
To what extent is it old?
Yeah.
Well, that was just the aerial photograph. The fence was actually added in, it was June of 2007.
That's older than 2007?
Yes, it is.
This photograph is from March of 2014.
But anyway,
Can you just point?
Where's the fence on there?
In the picture on the screen?
I can't see the fence there myself either on that picture.
Okay.
Maybe you could bring the site plan up to...
Sure.
And
Or
several of us can...
if you could just tell us the general area of where the existing fence is.
Okay, so it's in the middle of the back of this lot to create a storage area. Okay.
And there's actually 4 parking
It's
spaces in that.
there's probably one here too, in the middle of that, what's going to be the landscape strip, right? Okay.
It's in.
Go ahead and show that to the,
Now, if Mr. Anthony can maybe show us on the aerial.
Yeah. If we can pull the screen back up.
I can see it on here, I believe.
It is in this general area where you can see that things are stored. It's really difficult on an aerial to see a fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it surrounds that storage area, or it's just behind the storage area?
it's on 3 sides.
Okay. Thank you.
So yes, it encloses the storage area on 3 sides, and of course the building is the 4th side.
Gotcha. All right.
Surprised that fence doesn't show up a little more on that photograph, but it sure doesn't.
Got to the bottom of that.
Well, I couldn't tell how old these plans were. I assume they're plans from previous, they're not current for a new building, any.
All we're doing is just dividing the properties.
All right, Mr. Dodd, anything else you'd like to add to your application? All right, thank you very much. At this time, then, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I move to approve the application subject to the conditions recommended by the staff.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Dodd, that application's been approved. All right, let's see. A couple more here. This is application Z16013 by Mr. Joe Swanson, Jr., representing Swanson Companies, making the following request for property in a commercial highway district located at 1660 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. First, a special use permit to allow a group assembly for greater than 250 people in the CH district. And second, a variance from the ordinance which states that if there is a change in the use of an existing building, structure, or development which requires issuance of a special use permit, then the entire building, structure, or development, including parking area, shall comply with the landscaping requirements set forth in the ordinance. All right. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Yes, sir. Subject property is located at 1660 Middle Tennessee Boulevard and is zoned CH. This property houses the Shops of Middle Tennessee, which is about a 47,000 square foot shopping center that lies adjacent to the Fred's discount store. The applicant, Joe Swanson Jr., wishes to convert approximately 31,000 square feet of the shopping center into an Expo Center. The Mid-10 Expo Center is currently located at 1209 Park Avenue, but would be relocated to this shopping center. The exterior of the existing shopping center would be remodeled. The Expo Center would operate from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., would host crowds of anywhere from 50 to 1,000 people, and would host events including consignment sales, trade shows, weddings, political events, among others. The applicant requests a special use permit to allow a group assembly use for greater than 250 persons in the CH zone. The applicant's second request is for a variance from Section 27C3C of the zoning ordinance, which requires that if a development is granted a special use permit, then the entire development shall comply with city landscaping standards. These standards would include perimeter landscaping 10 feet in width, as well as base of building plantings. Because the site is already built out, the applicant seeks a variance to allow landscape islands in the parking lot to serve as a substitute for the required planting yards and base of building plantings. The applicant plans to restripe a large portion of the parking lot that's currently unused and would install landscape islands on that portion of the lot The islands would be constructed at intervals of about every 8 to 13 spaces, as shown on the site layout. The applicant contends that the existing configurations of the parking lot, utility easements, and an existing fence pose a practical difficulty and create unusual characteristics on the lot. Staff's review of the site suggests that if the perimeter planting yards are required, the applicant could lose as many as 60 parking spaces. And while staff believes that the parking shown on the site layout is adequate for this site, the loss of 60 spaces would likely necessitate a revision of the site layout. If the board approves the special use permit and variance, staff recommends the following 2 conditions. First, the owners of the properties located at 1660 and 1664 Middle Tennessee Boulevard shall create a shared parking agreement document and submit it to the planning director and city attorney for review. Upon approval by the planning director and city attorney, the owners shall execute the agreement and record it in a manner to be determined by the city attorney. The second condition, the applicant shall install landscape islands and associated landscaping, trees and shrubs in quantities that meet or exceed those shown on the site layout entitled 2016 Exhibit Center Remodeling the Shops at Middle Tennessee. Staff can answer any questions that you have, and we can also go through the exhibits.
All right. Yes, sir. If you'd usher us through those exhibits and aerial photos, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. I will start with aerial photography just to familiarize everybody with the site. This is the existing shops at Middle Tennessee. I have 2 lots highlighted because even though they are 2 lots, 2 separate parcels, they both play into this request. So this is the existing shops at Middle Tennessee. Right now, there is a laundromat tenant. I believe there may be like a check cashing. There may be a small convenience store, all within that existing shopping center that front Middle Tennessee Boulevard. On the adjoining parcel is the Fred's discount store. This is just a closer view showing. And as you can see, there's a large part of the parking lot back here that is rarely, if ever, used for anything. And it's currently, it's either unstriped or it may have been striped at some point and faded out just due to lack of use. To go to the, go to some photos taken of the actual shopping center. This was taken from Middle Tennessee Boulevard. As you can see, a large part of the shopping center here is vacant. And this is the section where the Expo Center would be located. Again, from a different angle, on this one you can actually see the Fred's store. That's the blue canopy toward the end of the building. But again, just beyond the white trailer in the photo, this is the area where the Expo Center would be located. This photo is showing, first of all, some overhead TVA lines, which do cut sort of right through the middle of the property, but it also shows the unstriped portion of the parking lot. It shows the existing parking lot islands, but then you can see these this large area of unstriped parking that does not currently have islands. Those islands would be added as part of this development. And this photo is just looking to the northeast. You can see the existing Bank of America building, and again, those TVA overhead lines that cut through the site. The applicant did submit a site layout for us, and I will get us to that. Actually, he also submitted some building elevations. This did not scan well, but it does show some improvements that would be made to the exterior of the structure.
Do those TVA power lines prevent any landscape islands, or?
No, I think that he would be able to construct the landscape islands most likely within that area.
Are there a number of parking places he's supposed to have? I guess there's some mention of not wanting to do some things based on.
We did a calculation, and these are always difficult to do calculations on because so many different uses within a shopping center. But I think the number, and Mr. Swanson probably knows this better than I do, but I think the number that staff arrived at was 425. and he is meeting 425. Actually, he may be 1 or 2 over 425.
But not by many.
Not by many, not by many. But as you can see, the site layout that I've pulled up here, you can see the parking improvements that would be installed. This is currently, this area, the darker area is currently sort of the unimproved portion of the parking lot, the unstriped portion, and that's the portion that would be striped and landscape islands would be added to.
Okay, Donald, so are we dealing with just the property that is not Fred's, or are we dealing with Fred's too?
We're going to deal with the entire property. Mr. Swanson owns both of those properties and has control of the parking lots for both. And so that's why one of the conditions that we're recommending here is that he sign a shared parking agreement, which I think he's already began work on with the city attorney as well as planning staff, to ensure that in the future those lots can share that entire parking area.
So with regard to the request for the variance from the zoning ordinance that talks about the parking area shall comply with the landscaping requirements, what exactly is he asking to vary from the ordinance as far as landscaping requirements are concerned?
Yeah, so what the ordinance says is that if he gets the special use permit, then his site is going to have to comply with landscape standards. Well, the landscape standard on this is the 10-foot perimeter planting yard all the way around the property. Well, 10 feet, I believe, on the front, and then 8 feet all the way around the property. Since this property is already built out, since the concrete comes right up to the basically to the sidewalk and then to the street. I think that for him to do that would require taking out some parking spaces, creating space to be able to put in that perimeter landscaping. So that's part of it. The other part that when I was reading through the ordinance, the other part that caught me was the base of building plantings. The ordinance would require 3 feet of plantings at the base, all the way around the base of the building. And again, because it's a built-out site, in order to do that, that would require probably some significant reshuffling of the parking area. And with the site just meeting the minimum parking requirement, losing any parking spaces would probably be pretty detrimental to the project.
Okay. Okay. Here's what I'm getting at is that I don't think the ordinance says it only applies to these landscaping requirements to new developments, to new construction. I think by implication we can say it applies to everything, whether it's new construction, redevelopment, or whatever. So if there are areas on here that really truly are difficult to comply with, sounds like at the base of the building you're talking about where it's already sidewalked, and concrete, you're going to have to break stuff up, and that'd be probably difficult. Are there areas, though, of the property that he can get to? Like, I'm, looking at, I guess this is the east, it would be the east side along the parking lot there. Existing edge of pavement. Is that an area that can be landscaped? It looks like the pavement actually comes all the way up to the property line on the north edge. It looks like it goes all the way to the road on the west edge. I'm just looking for ways. I think that's the purpose of the landscaping ordinance when the council enacted it. Was that we're going to make property look aesthetically better. And if we, when these properties then come to us, then this is the opportunity to take advantage of that ordinance. But if we're just going to give them a free pass and say, well, you're going to redevelop it, you can just keep it like it is, kind of defeats the purpose, I think, of the ordinance as it would apply to any existing construction. So, if there's an opportunity here where we can look hard at this and say, you're right, there are some difficulties here and there, but here's some areas where we can, improve the look of the property. Is there anything on this property that would be amenable to that?
I think I think that's a really good point and a really good question, and Mr. Swanson may want to weigh in. I do know, just sort of as an aside, but to your point, that in Mr. Swanson's request letter and in my conversations with him, when this site was initially constructed, there were very few standards in place at the time, and that over time he has made some pretty significant landscaping improvements just sort of on his own that weren't required over time. As far as whether there are locations, there may well be. That would be a discussion for you all to have in conjunction with the applicant. But there may well be. But I do hope that that we do give some credit for him over the years improving the site with landscaping, even though it wasn't necessarily required.
Yeah.
At that east side of the parking lot, between the parking lot and Mars Street, it looks from the aerial that there's some existing vegetation at that location. There looks to be, I mean, I may be seeing the aerial wrong. You could pull that. It looks like at that spot that you were referring to, there's some trees. I don't know if we were going to consider that to say that any approval would be conditioned upon reserving and improving upon the existing tree line at that location.
If I may interrupt, can I ask Mr. Swanson, do you have any intention, any of the green areas that are shown, do you have any intention of paving or doing anything into any of those areas?
No, not at this time. That's actually under the TVA easement.
That area between the eastern edge?
Yes, along Mars. That is under TVA power lines.
So at that edge of the pavement on the eastern side until Mars Street, would you be able to add any vegetation in that easement, or can you not, due to the easement, are you able to even do that?
I will have to get TVA's approval. I've already asked them to approve the plantings that I knew I was going to do in the islands, but it sometimes takes several weeks to get a response.
Yes, sir.
So I'd have to get their approval no matter what your decision would be here today.
But there are some existing trees there at the south end of that, right, that looks like trees, the south end of the area along Mars.
Yes.
Okay. They must not be very tall, or TVA would have already had them.
Right.
They certainly got a height. Usually they let you have some bushes and that sort of thing, but they get, I think we all know they get pretty fierce about trees that they figure are threatening their lines too high.
Is it the pretty dense greenery on the south?
Yes.
That is all still in place?
Yes.
Okay.
And Joe, y'all do a great job when you develop property to make it look good. What are y'all going to do to this property to improve its aesthetics here? I mean, like I said, I think this is a great opportunity. Middle Tennessee Boulevard is and is going to continue to be now even more so, a dump in for traffic to the university and that area. So it kind of like a gateway almost. So I think this, like I said, it's a really good opportunity for us to start focusing on this area and redevelop it in a way that makes it aesthetically better than it was.
If you remember when Middle Tennessee Boulevard, which was Tennessee Boulevard, was improved, we went in and did landscaping just behind the sidewalk after the city completed their work. We also added some islands and restriped the parking lot at that time and added trees and shrubs in those islands that we added without city approval, but we knew what we needed to do. They were striped at the time. We just concrete curbed, cut the asphalt out, and put the trees and shrubs in. And we ran that all along Middle Tennessee Boulevard. Unfortunately, one of the issues that we ran into is in that little strip behind the sidewalk. It's in that radius, and we lost 3 or 4, so we ended up having to replace those trees on several occasions, and it hadn't happened in a couple, 2 or 3 years. So hopefully those will remain. But in that curve is a bad place just beyond or just north of the Sonic. The back part of the building is in the 100-year floodplain. So the floor is out, but there's a dock on the back side, and that's all 100-year on the back. So I don't know that there's anything I can really do in good conscience back there because it's going to impede the flow of the water. Adding the islands, we felt from a city perspective, I met with Gary and Matthew and Donald about this, we felt like the parking islands would get us up to that, and then with what I've done in the past would be acceptable. We've remodeled the building. That came just after or just at the tail end of the Middle Tennessee improvements. We remodeled the entire outside of the building. So it's been setting like this for 8 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. I'm a little anxious.
So will you retain any of the tenants that are in there now, or is it going to be entirely Expo?
I will retain the tenants, the laundromat, the tenants that front Middle Tennessee Boulevard. Then I have a ministry in it called the Den, which is the youth department for New Vision. And then we own the Fred's property, and that's a land lease, and that's good for another 15 years, I think. And then they could always renew. They have an option.
Okay. So I maybe misunderstood. I thought there's going to be some sort of Expo Center or something like that going on.
That's in the 31,000 feet where the Kroger's and Super X used to be, if you remember.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we're going to combine those two spaces and make one Expo Center out of it. Because we've leased the one at 1209, where the Gun and Knife Show is currently, or has been.
Okay.
The one that's out on that park?
Park, 1209
Okay,
Park.
You've leased that to a tenant?
To a tenant, yes.
What about the Fred's area on that end? Are they doing any work on that side?
No, ma'am. And we have tried, when we did the improvements in 07, 09, the other islands we added and the landscaping, we engaged them and asked them if they wanted us to help them because they are responsible for their parking lot maintenance, and they didn't want any part of it. So anything we're doing, I'm doing.
So do you think you're going to have any problem with this whole joint parking arrangement?
No, because I own both properties, and they need 60 parking spaces, and I don't encroach on their 60.
Okay.
Now, I may get a phone call or two, but I can handle that.
Yeah.
I'll deal with that.
So that joint agreement is for, right now, it's only a formality. It's only a use for future owners if that land was divided into
Right.
two owners.
And I believe, didn't we put in that if we sell one or the other?
I believe it's on my desk.
Okay.
And I had some comment, I think, and I hadn't yet gotten back, I think.
Jack.
Clyde.
Oh, okay.
Did Clyde draft that one or
No,
Jack?
Jack Gritton.
Okay, then I think we've talked, and I think that's
Done.
complete. Yeah. I added a little bit of language to it, and I think we're complete
Right.
with that one. There's another one, I guess, that I have on my desk.
Okay.
But if I might ask a question, it's kind of unrelated to what we've been talking about now, but this drawing here shows an existing 28,000-foot building at the west end, and then an existing, I guess that was the Kroger? Mm-hmm. So you're going to slice off a portion of the west end of that building, probably already have. Where the laundromat, whatever is. So these building lines aren't exactly accurate for what exists today. So a portion of that building.
Yeah, they may not be.
A portion of that building, and then the old drugstore will be the Expo Center, right?
Yes.
And I guess it said Mega Video, is that where the youth
Center
is
Den,
now?
Youth, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks. That makes sense. I was curious from the descriptions, and I didn't think that whole 28,000 foot was a laundromat.
No.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. All right. Then at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. All right. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments.
The first special use permit?
Yes, sorry.
I'll second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Now, I'll just say this. I think this is a good opportunity. When these type of redevelopments come up for the board, for the city, for the planning commission, for council to look at these redevelopments and see if there are ways that these properties can be improved using, we've worked hard on, not we, as council, planning commission worked hard on these ordinances in an effort to, get some of these areas looking better, developed aesthetically, developed economically, all that. And so when these kind of things come up, I think it's always important to look hard to see if, rather than just granting these willy-nilly, that we look hard to see if we can affect some of the intent of the ordinance. It looks like, I think Mr. Swanson's done what's economically feasible probably on the property to do to meet the ordinance. There are some other areas of the property that, have some not intentional landscaping, but accidental landscaping, I suppose, and that would probably go toward meeting that requirement. And at the same time, I think it's important that the property redevelop. If we required what the ordinance requires, it probably would make it financially impossible to redevelop the property. So I guess we're getting what we can. Maybe not getting all we want, but we got what we can probably can get. So for that reason, I'll vote in favor of it. Just wanted to say that for what that's worth. All right. Any other comments? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Swanson, that application has been approved.
We have a second. We have to vote on the part that you were discussing.
I'm sorry, yes, there are two separate items, the special use permit and the variance. So I don't know which, did you make the motion?
So this is a special use permit.
I did. She corrected me. She made me say that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I guess we need another motion, I guess, right?
I got you. All right.
She's keeping us straight up here. So.
I don't know how.
All right. So now we got to vote on the variance from the zoning ordinance that requires the landscaping as set forth in section 27. So, all right. Motion on that.
I'll move to approve the variance, subject to staff the conditions recommended by the staff, as well as I'd like to add a condition to keep or improve upon the current vegetation between the parking lot and Mars Street, as the applicant is able, considering the easement that they are under.
I'll second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now it's been granted. All right. Finally, we've got application Z16014 by Matthew and Bobby Bryant. They're requesting a special use permit in order to allow an accessory apartment on single-family RS10 district located at 303 2nd Avenue. All right, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of 2nd Avenue and Frisco Street in the RS10 zoning district. The applicants, Matthew and Bobby Bryant, are having a single-family house and detached garage constructed on this site. They would like to use the second story of the garage as an accessory apartment. Only family members and invited guests would be allowed to occupy the apartment. They are requesting a special use permit to allow this accessory apartment. The garage structure measures approximately 27 feet by 24 feet, fronts Frisco Street, and is separated from the house by approximately 40 feet per the plan submitted. The structure meets all of the required setbacks for the RS10 district. The applicant attests that all of the general standards for a special use permit will be met. And with regard to the specific standards for accessory apartments, the applicants attest that only one accessory apartment will be constructed on the site. Only family members or guests will occupy the apartment. The entrance to the apartment will be located at the rear of the structure. The apartment will satisfy all local codes, and the apartment will not exceed 700 square feet in area. If the board approves the special use permit, staff recommends the following condition. The applicant shall complete the restriction of land use document prepared by the city attorney and comply with all notarization and recording requirements as determined by the city attorney. Staff can answer any questions that you may have, and we do have photos as well.
Yeah. Go ahead and show those, Mr.
Sure thing. I'll start with the aerial, just to give you a perspective of where this site is, corner of 2nd and Frisco. Zooming in a bit, here it is a vacant lot, but it is not actually a vacant lot, as the house is currently being constructed. This is the house that sits on the lot. It does face 2nd Avenue. This is taken from Frisco Street, so it's showing the side of the house, as well as you can see in the back the garage structure behind it. The garage structure fronts Frisco Street. Another view, it's a 2-car garage. This would be the side of the garage that is closest to the rear of the house. Okay, I think that's it on photos, and then the applicant did submit a site layout for us as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Remind us again why this constitutes an accessory apartment that requires a special use permit.
Within most of the single-family residential zones, in order to have any sort of accessory apartment, you do have to obtain a special use permit.
But I mean, I guess what constitutes an accessory apartment?
Kitchen facilities?
Is it a kitchen?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, if a kitchen is installed, that's typically how building and codes defines that it is an accessory apartment. I apologize. I didn't get the question.
A kitchen.
So if it was merely a bedroom or a sleeping room, it would not require that. But if there's you need something more than a microwave, I think it doesn't take much more than that. I don't think it's considered a dwelling unit, and then it's an accessory apartment. And in order to hopefully keep it from being rented out by the next owner, we have them execute the land use restriction, which I will get to Donald and we'll get to you folks.
And David, I think in the past we've said these lapse, don't they, on transfer of ownership?
Normally not, but we have on, I think, on a rare occasion we did. But
we did one last month.
Yes, there was last month.
We did one last month on Northborough Court that did, yes. But it was because I did not know about the restriction of land use document.
Well, when we went through the last month, I failed to mention that to Donald.
Special use permits lapse, so the next person didn't automatically get to run the home-based business, but these maybe stayed with the structure?
I mean, the reality is you've got a structure. It's got some manner of a kitchen and a bathroom and a sleeping quarters. You know, it is an accessory apartment, and even if the only way to enforce it if it was going to lapse would be to have them tear it down, which probably doesn't make a lot of sense.
So the restriction of land use document, it is filed with
it's recorded.
It's recorded,
yes.
And so it would follow any sale.
Yes.
It would continue.
Right.
And this, I do want to point out a little bit of a difference between this one and the one last month. The one last month, the gentleman was wanting to actually it was a modular structure that he was going to put in the back, that he was not planning on it being a permanent structure, which is very different from this, which is a brick and mortar permanent structure.
Okay. And then, Mr. Anthony, you were talking about the fact that the restriction being that only family and guests can stay there, but there wasn't any comment about the fact that it cannot be rented out. Can you rent it to family and guests?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the deed restriction then specifically say?
It limits the occupancy to family and guests.
Well, what's guests of the family? Well, couldn't that be just a tenant?
Short-term guests. You know, I don't remember the exact language of the document, but it does prohibit renting it as an apartment to a stranger.
Okay. I mean, that's the general gist of it,
Yes.
right? Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, Mr. Miss Bryant.
My wife Bobby. And the reason why we're wanting to do it is just when we have guests, to have them a place that they can stay with comfort.
And my dad we're not from this area, so we have a lot of company from out of state, and also my dad is elderly, and I eventually maybe would like to have a place for him to stay, but not with me, but right next to me.
Exactly.
Oh, you could have him father-in-law.
He's a great man.
All right. Well, this is close to the university.
Yes.
Pretty close, isn't it? Like almost just across the street from it, right?
Pretty close.
Real close.
Okay. The obvious concern is that you all may not own the property forever, and if you sell it to somebody else, that they may not have the same attitude toward the use of that accessory structure like you do, that they may want to rent it out to a student or something like that. And so that's what we're trying to prevent.
Understand.
Okay.
I'm a realtor too, and I would, if I ever did sell, I would make sure that I disclose that on the disclosure, that the rules of that, and hopefully.
Okay. All right. Anything else you all want to add to your application? Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, then at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the application with the recommended conditions of the staff.
I'll second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. All right, final item on our agenda is staff reports and other business.
I have none.
There being none, all right, then we're adjourned.